I'm waiting for that copyright bullshit, but I don't see it happening. We're gonna listen to a little of this Kennedy.
It's not just a question of wages. It's a question of housing. It's a question of education. It's a question of living conditions. It's a basic question of hope for the future. And that's what this committee is dedicated to try to do something about. We're going to try to improve not just your lives, but more importantly, the lives of your children.
You heard that. This is the lives of your children. And when you look at how things are right now, our children's future is very, very grim. Because when you look at what our children are on and dealing with for to have a future, it's really a lot of bullshit.
I have reason to believe that there's going to be a riot started, and somebody tells me that there's going to be trouble if you don't stop them.
Now, listen to this guy carefully. He's saying that what he was doing was basically stopping the riot, but really he is enforcing the riot with his riot squad being the fucking policemen.
If I have reason to believe that there's going to be a riot started and somebody tells me that there's going to be trouble if you don't stop them, then it's my duty to stop them.
And then you go out and arrest them?
Absolutely.
And charge them?
Charge them.
What do you charge them with?
For violating unlawful assembly.
I think that's the most interesting. Who told you that they're going to riot?
The men right out in the field that they were talking to said, if you don't get them out of here, we're going to cut their hearts out. So
now you tell me, for somebody to say that if they don't leave, we're going to cut their hearts out to the police chief, and the police chief don't arrest them for threatening to kill somebody by cutting their heart out, and we still have these type of motherfuckers that still running the police force. What the fuck? This is some stupid bullshit. But that was in them days. Them days have been stopped and over with.
So rather than let them get cut, you remove the cause. You don't find no police brutality here. You've had nobody say that we beat anyone or anything like that. This is not Selma, Alabama.
Senator, could I finish my question here? I mean, this is the most interesting concept, I think, that you suddenly hear or talk about the fact that somebody makes a report about somebody's going to get out of order, perhaps violate the law, and you go in and arrest them and they haven't done anything wrong. How can you go arrest somebody if they haven't violated the law?
They're ready to violate the law. In other words,
in the interim period of time,
the bullshit that goes with the bullshit
the sheriff
law.
and the district attorney read the Constitution of the United States.
Afterward, we were able to get Bob to join us going through farm worker housing, looking at terrible housing and terrible working conditions.
When the senator came out with us, he had that gift of just being able to connect with everybody. Regardless of your station in life, you were just treated as another human being.
And that's how we gotta treat each other, like we humans living here all together.
Then Bob said, I understand there's a picket line at the Giorgio Ranch. Where is it? He said, very close. So we went out and picketed. First time I ever was as a politician picketing any place. The workers are out there saying, Viva Kennedy, Kennedy for Presidente.
Kennedy had never met Chavez, and they started to talk. And they're both speaking rather quietly.
And is there support amongst the workers? There's a lot of support amongst the workers and a lot of support among the entire community throughout the country.
And this circle started around them, and then it got to be 2 deep, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 circles of people around them. People in the back that obviously couldn't possibly hear what they were saying to each other. I don't know what they said, and I was standing right there. Everybody was just magnetized, just mesmerized that this is happening. That was it. They were bound together.
Anytime after 2:15, is that all right? Fine, it won't take very long. Good. Thanks.
It's fair use, and I'm still not understanding the post and understand. I'm just not getting why y'all keep copyrighting my shit simply because of the fact that all I'm doing is spreading out something that I'm saying something on top of. So therefore, where is the copyright of me taking the copies and the rights from somebody you having copies, their rights, and I ain't making no money off of it. So why are you taking me off of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube? I don't get it, but I get it. I get it. Y'all don't want the truth to roll like that wheelbarrow, and people live there and catch on till they've been lied to. Well, by y'all.
Anti-war demonstrators protest U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War in mass marches, rallies, and demonstrations.
Vietnam. Why are we there? We are there first because a friendly nation.
No, we're there because y'all fucking false flagged that bullshit.
Communist aggression.
That lying bullshit.
I was thinking over to Vietnam once in a while. I was chairman of the Asian Pacific Affairs, and it was a terrible thing. People forget that Johnson inherited the war from the Kennedys when we started with President Eisenhower. But then Jack Kennedy, and I hate to say this, but because he was my man, my friend, but he's the one that enlarged our presence in Vietnam. Johnson kept Kennedy, his entire cabinet. Same cabinet was around, same generals were around. And so Bobby was caught up in that little trap.
Bobby felt you couldn't just surrender it.
Obviously, we have a commitment in Vietnam that has to be kept. The aggression has been committed by North Vietnam and by the communists, and I think we have to meet that aggression.
But as the war went on, increasingly, he began to see that this was a disaster.
Yeah.
That this was not a war you could win.
Nope. One of the wars should have been in. Period. It wasn't a war that we were supposed to be in. It was the fucking bankers that did that bullshit. And we still got those same motherfucking bankers with the same mentality still doing shit. But we are the stupid fucking sheeple. And they left there slaughtering our motherfucking people at random.
I think that if anybody was going to say that the present situation in Vietnam is just the responsibility of President Johnson, then it would be very, very unfair. He inherited a situation.
But he came to the point where he had no choice.
All of us are concerned about the casualties, the death and suffering of our own young men in South Vietnam. We are concerned about the effects of our military action on the people of Vietnam. I believe that there is a middle way, that an end to the fighting and a peaceful settlement can be achieved.
I think that you will spend some time with your friend, Mr. Kennedy. I think he is functioning in this Vietnam field a little bit overtime. He and some of his stooges very much against us.
We are not in Vietnam to play the part of an avenging angel pouring death and destruction on the roads and the factories.
You can't prove no how, no way that no brown person had nothing to do with Kennedy's assassination. So, when you look at they killed their own, it had to have some agenda for them to kill their own. And the agenda is its own now. That one world order bullshit is happening now. And that we as the people continue being duped by technology and the entertainment bullshit. It is what it is. We already motherfucking slaves in this shit. We are the product. Bullshit. We some stupid people, boy. We've been taught to be fucking stupid. But we're not supposed to be stupid no fucking more. Because we know we can see through the fucking holes. It ain't about no fucking believing in no bullshit no more. It's about knowing. It's about the now.
And the home of thousands of Vietnamese.
Some will turn on their leaders and on their country and on our own fighting men.
We end the bombing. We go to the negotiating table.
Bobby says, halt the bombardment and make it clear that we'll negotiate, but we won't wait long. But nowhere, anytime, can he give you one damn word from a knowing. Misgivings about getting in debate with a little pissant, but
they want to say nothing about what they were saying, because that's what them people ain't want. They want to stop that war too.
We will spend this year for the economic development of South Vietnam $600 million.
Look. Give them the
but
drugs.
federal poverty assistance with the same number of people in the metropolitan New York area will be less than 1/6 that amount. The people of South Vietnam need this assistance. But so do the people of the United States.
We did that. And we still ain't helping the people here in the United States. We go in other countries and tear the country up, then fix the fucking country, and our country fucked up. But like I said again, our soldiers been taught to be stupid, but they brainwashed. They don't think for themselves anyway. That's why they give them orders, because they ain't nothing but soldiers. Empty-minded motherfucking puppets.
When met for the first time, Bobby would ask
I say it again. Empty-minded motherfucking puppets. Because they tell you to do this and you do that, thinking that you are being, let me see, how can I say this here? Waved away from what you are doing is you doing that. And just because you given an order to do that, you're not justifiable by that fucking order. Because if you know that shit is wrong that you're doing, and you just follow orders, you're nothing but a stupid ass fucking puppet. You shouldn't even be here.
1955, and there are still people who are very, very poor, people unable to get jobs, people who don't have a decent education and very little hope for the future, and children who are hungry.
He would never think of blaming people for their own poverty, the way some of these swine today act about the poor.
There is today an alien land within our own borders.
None.
Another America.
None.
A young college graduate who taught in a ghetto school sums it up this way. The books are junk, paint peels, cellar stinks, the teachers call you nigger, and the window falls on your head. These other Americans, separated from society, remind us of their presence only when the city explodes in the desperate acts of defeated men.
There was open war in the Los Angeles area called Watts.
That was with the police.
Get tired of being pushed around with your wife.
You don't think that our police department is still...
In all kind of ways, what do it. So they'll tell everybody you keep picking on it. Just stopping us on the street, kicking in the doors, taking down the police station and keeping your teeth in.
Well, they're stopping people on the street now.
Oh, yeah, that's big about now. Oh, they've been done a long time before.
Get your hands up, I said. Drop that purse and get your hands up.
Yeah, see?
Get your hands up.
Look, see? See, look, just kicking people and shit. This shit ain't just started. This shit been going on, man. When are we gonna hold these bitches accountable so this shit can stop?
Dissatisfaction with the welfare system causes riots in the ghetto district of Boston's Roxbury sector. Street riots,
See, this is the shit that they ain't letting you know. This is the shit that's coming out now, man.
Sergeant, you've just recently returned from Vietnam. Could you tell us how it feels to have to come from one zone of combat in a foreign land to one in your own land?
It's not a good feeling. Not one I'm kind of proud of, but it's a job.
See, look, he's smiling and shit, because that's going to show you how stupid we've been taught to be stupid. Because how you going to smile and you in here killing innocent fucking people? Bunch of bullshit, man. Boy, it's saying that we've been taught to be so fucking stupid.
It's a Harvard. They see millions and millions of dollars spent on rockets overseas to other countries. And here in their own country, you know.
And nobody tell me that we wasn't taught to be stupid. Because as soon as I asked the question, if we wasn't taught to be stupid, why were we taught to believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy? Why were we taught to get on our knees and pray to a God being in the sky, being our Father?
We have never been violent.
It is what it is.
We have been true non-violence.
The people have a right, you're totally justified in going out into the streets
taking up arms and dealing with that situation.
Pillage, looting, murder, and arson have nothing to do with civil rights. We will not tolerate lawlessness.
But just as surely, just as clearly, it is fruitless simply to quell the explosions without attacking the roots.
And that's why I've suggested incentives to do construction work, housing in the slums, and also to establish factories and businesses there. It therefore creates this partnership of business and the private enterprise system, which I think has never been utilized before, and we've depended just on Washington, depended just on federal funds, which has been a mistake.
Senator Robert Kennedy and his staff have developed a new bipartisan program aimed at breathing new life into the Bedford-Stuyvesant ghetto, called the Bedford-Stuyvesant Corporation.
The Bed-Stuy program. It was very controversial because he really believed that the federal government couldn't do it all. He didn't like the culture of dependency that was emerging from the Great Society.
We don't want to destroy financially every city in the United States. We're going to have to get people off welfare.
Come on now.
Welfare is not the answer.
It ain't.
It destroys the individual and it destroys his family.
Right.
The only answer to that is to find jobs for
Come on now.
Make jobs available.
Come on now.
You can't just tell people to go to work if there are no jobs available.
Come on now.
But it was not easy because the local community did not trust him. In fact, an elected official called him the blue-eyed white devil.
Well, you don't think it's an extension of a kind of liberal colonialism?
Of course it is. We're living in a colony, and every time these people feel that they want to do something for the black community, then they come in here and do it themselves. They didn't never come in and say to a community organization or to the people of the community, look, we would like to do something for the community. How best can we do it?
Yep.
And this is what has got the black people fed up with the whole society.
I remember the not great welcome Kennedy had received by a lot of the Bedford-Stuyvesant leadership, who essentially said to him, as I read in the newspaper, that don't walk through our misery to a headline.
The question is, to what extent have you sought to involve the total community of Bedford-Stuyvesant in this planning process?
I think that to have any success in Bedford-Stuyvesant is going to require the initiative, the imagination, and the courage of the people who live in the community.
The corporation's first target was 400 four-story buildings that were in various stages of death and decay.
My dealings with him, he was straight up, straight at you, clear. He was tough as nails. Just the outreach that it took to assemble the group of leaders, architects and design people, very high-profile heads of banks.
The renovation created jobs for 272 unskilled, unemployed residents, people who otherwise would have been on the streets.
I congratulate the people of Bedford-Stuyvesant. We've been distressed by the divisions that have taken place in the United States between blacks and whites. The fact is that we can work together. The fact is that we can make a better society. And the fact is that we will, and we'll have a better America for the next generation of Americans. Thank you very much.
That's why they killed that dude off. They killed that dude off because that dude had a motherfucking real fucking vision. No fucking dream. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't waiting for no God to give him no vision. He was giving the vision from the divine creator of it.
To do as much good immediately as possible.
But he was one of believing that God didn't teach the bullshit too. But it is what it is. We were taught to.
Working or not working.
After 2 civil rights bills and the third year of poverty bill's operation, the situation of the Negro in Mississippi is that he's poorer than he was, he has less housing, he's as badly educated, he's almost in despair. We face now a major crisis in the Mississippi Delta.
We had a lot of problems going on in Mississippi at the time, so when I got invited to testify, I was very glad to do it.
Here you have a number of people who've never had any skills, who are basically illiterate in large part, who have little housing, absolutely no place to go, no jobs, and no hopes of getting any.
I had not been a Robert Kennedy fan because I had remembered him first from the McCarthy days. Next, in the Justice Department and the taping of Martin Luther King. So my image of him was not very strong, and obviously he was very much affected by the loss of his brother, but my image of him was still not so wonderfully positive.
Take one example of a woman in LaFleur County with 6 children, absolutely no income. She has not worked. She was cut off welfare, and we think illegally, but she simply cannot feed her kids. Now, this problem has got to be faced. The single largest problem facing all of us in Mississippi right now is how can people eat during the winter? This is an urgent situation which must be looked into and which must be
It stopped me from doing my shit because I was getting ready to live there and put some more shit on YouTube. Why I'm putting this on YouTube, I would put on another channel some more shit on YouTube. Because I feel like YouTube is for you to be on the tube, saying what you want to if your shit is true. Fuck all this bullshit that y'all letting be on YouTube. That's bullshit, and y'all know it's bullshit, and y'all know it's dumbing down the fucking people because they're being stupidized.
Senator, what do you make of the problem of poverty in this, our poorest state?
I think
They're
that,
being stupidized.
considering we have a gross national product of some $700 billion, and we spend $75 billion on armaments, to think that we could be doing more for those who are poor, and particularly for our children who have nothing to do with being born into this world, but don't have enough to eat. And what we have here, of course, is a considerable amount of hunger. We have the children with distended stomachs. The fact is that we're not doing what we should be doing in this country to deal with this problem.
As we were walking from the one house to the other, Robert Kennedy says to me, I've been all over the world, and I've never seen anything like this.
Robert Kennedy was not who I thought he was going to be. He was listening and learning. He was also very curious. He didn't talk a whole lot, but he would ask a lot of questions.
Do you know anything about the poverty program?
No.
You ever heard of Head Start?
No.
Nice to see you.
And I was very moved by how he related to children, the way in which he could express emotions through touch.
You're a compassionate man.
When he went into a place outside of camera range and tried to get a response out of a young baby with a bloated belly. It was filthy. It was dark and dank. When he went outside in the sunshine, he was clearly shaken. And that's when all of my questions evaporated. We connected, and I was very grateful that he came, that he saw, that he empathized, and I also was confident that he would do something about it. It was clear that he'd gone through a transformation.
Yep.
He went back to Washington and said, "You've got to get food down there."
It was totally shocking. Robert Kennedy went home and had dinner with his children, and he was so upset about it. He banged his fist on the table and said, "You," and he pointed at every one of his children, "you have to do something about this." His children tell me that story to this day.
Rural poverty likes to hide in the isolation of open space, the woods, the hills. Senator Kennedy is in the rural poverty counties of eastern Kentucky. This is Senator Kennedy's first trip to this section of Kentucky. He is, in a sense, fulfilling a mission set by his brother shortly before the assassination in 1963.
What did your father do? Where does he live? Where do you live? How far?
Very fast.
Do you have friends? Do you like school? What are you learning in school? Do you know how to add? Do you know how to add? You know 2 plus 3? What is that? Yeah.
Lyndon Johnson declared war on poverty 4 years ago here in this same Appalachian Hill country. But the president has been preoccupied much of the time since with Vietnam, and the poverty war is suffering from lack of funds and waning interest in Congress. So Robert Kennedy, in this tour of some of the most depressing pockets of rural poverty in America, is redeclaring the war that Lyndon Johnson never finished.
We have a struggle that's taking place in Southeast Asia and Vietnam that's taking a great part of the resources of this country. And $30 billion. Some of that money should be coming down here into eastern Kentucky to deal with the problems and find jobs for people.
And I raised 9 children. I only have one. My baby's soon to be 11 years old. He's home with me now in school. Well, I've got one son that's home with me right now, not been very long.
Do you have medical care for him?
And no, I don't have anything for him. That's
How much do you pay for school lunch?
36 a day, so that would be $1.50 a week. That'd be about $6.
I don't think that it's acceptable. As I've said before, with the gross national product that this country has, with the great amount of wealth that this country has, that we still have people who can't find jobs. We still have children who don't have enough to eat and don't have clothes to wear. I think that's unacceptable in the country.
Did you get to see the senator?
Yes, sir, I did.
How did you feel about it?
I was very pleased. I just got to lay my hand on him. He was something, I mean, you don't see every day around here.
Robert Kennedy, during those days, was one of the few politicians that could go into the heart of the Deep South and of Appalachia, where people were so poor. He was a senator from New York, but he became a political leader for all Americans.
There is no apparent end in sight to the Bobby phenomenon. The weekly news magazines go to a cover story. Others splash Bobby's face, his family, his fortune, and his brain trust. He is a multi-plane public figure and one of America's most controversial. He radiates political power beyond all reasonable measurements, primarily because of what he might become, President of the United States.
It was a constant conversation. And there was those of us in the office who were split. Some wanted him to run, some did not want him to run.
Do you think about running for president? Does it occur to you?
Well, I suppose it occurs to every little boy, and he's told
But you're not a little boy
anymore that they can be president of the United States.
I went to Senator Kennedy several times and said, you'd be the man that could make the greatest difference to this country.
Ethel was for it. Ethel was gung-ho. Teddy was against it. A lot of people were against it.
Do you bring us any late word on his presidential candidacy?
Oh, no. I think in our family, we've seen in recent years that fate has a way of working itself on the future of all of us.
There are a lot of us who were most enthusiastic about the idea.
I said, Senator, I guess I've never told you, I really would like you to run.
No. The question was whether I'm running for president and how much I'm going to win by.
He came over behind me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, I wish I could. I wish I could.
As long as President Johnson has anything to say about it, Bobby Kennedy will never go anywhere.
Senator, you and President Johnson had some pretty stern disagreements. Do you feel there is any way that the president could abbreviate your political career, sir?
I don't think he's probably interested in that.
I was even split. On the one hand, I said he has to. The country was coming apart.
The nation's largest peace demonstration was directed at the two principal issues of the new left: repressive war abroad and racist poverty at home.
He's our best hope to keep the country together.
They got soldiers on farm ground with guns and everything. That's what they lied.
Throughout the world.
It's lies.
We want
Lies.
we must have. This kind of turmoil and chaos and bloodshed in our own country. And we can do something about it.
On the other hand, I did have this foreboding that this doesn't feel right. There's something wrong. This is not going to end well.
About who would want that man dead? Who and why? Why would you want him dead? There's no reason whatsoever to want him dead unless you're the motherfucker that want to stay with the shit like that, fucked up. Because he was going to change that shit.
World War II, fella. I have a son that's going to go into the army.
Nobody could accept anything.
The United States is becoming two countries, one white, one black.
We stand on the eve of a black revolution, brother.
Well, if there's going to be another riot, I want to be prepared. You know what is necessary?
We can't continue to live in a nation every summer going up in flames. Every day killing up people in Vietnam like we're killing. We're trying to save this nation.
The Tet Offensive broke out in January. Vietnam spun out of control.
The Vietnamese New Year, Tet. The enemy chose this occasion to unleash well-coordinated attacks in several areas of the Republic.
Now demonstrators shout down government officials, and the government brass protesters. Anarchists threaten to burn the country down, while tanks have patrolled American cities and machine guns have been fired at American children. Truly, we seem to fulfill the vision of Yeats. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Near anarchy is loosed upon the world.
Is it fair to say, then, that you are dissatisfied?
I think you have to be dissatisfied. I don't think that we should turn to violence. I don't think that we should turn to war as the answer to the solution to the problem. So I'm dissatisfied with our society, and I suppose I'm dissatisfied with our country. I'm dissatisfied with the fact that perhaps that I don't do enough personally.
The chaos spurred me into sitting down and writing a letter to my friend Bob. Dear Bob, I had wanted to write you a long letter explaining why I thought you should make a run for the presidency this year.
Campaigning is underway in the New Hampshire presidential primary coming up next Tuesday. On the Republican side, Richard Nixon is urging New Hampshire Republicans to give him a big send-off in his quest for the GOP presidential nomination. They have failed in so many areas that we need a new team in Washington.
I don't think we can afford 5 summers of blood. You should run because if you won, the country might be safe. If we have LBJ for another 4 years, there won't be much of a country left.
Sir, we see an organization and clubs springing up all over the place promoting Senator Robert Kennedy.
Do you have any comment on that? Well, I've been going to support President Johnson and Vice President Humphrey in the election of 1968.
Action in the Democratic Party began when Minnesota Senator Eugene McCarthy openly challenged the policies of the Johnson administration and declared himself a candidate for the Democratic nomination.
What we're doing is laying down a challenge to control the presidency of the United States of America.
Robert Kennedy believed that Eugene McCarthy might win some primaries and might give Johnson some trouble. He was never going to be nominated or elected president of the United States.
March 10th, 2 days before the New Hampshire primary, Cesar Chavez was on a hunger strike. Cesar says he won't stop his strike unless Robert Kennedy comes and breaks bread with him. The next day, we're sitting in this small plane flying up to Delano. He's thinking about whether he's going to run, and he has 1 foot in the old politics and 1 foot in the new politics. And he was torn between those 2 ways of thinking. He had learned from his father that you didn't do things that you weren't going to win. Getting his own brother nominated as president using all the old tools. But the new politics said you do the cause, whether you win or not. And the cause in his mind is the pursuit of justice. And Robert Kennedy says to the 3 of us, I'm going to run for president.
Senator, how are you? Senator, there are increasing reports out of Washington that your advisors are now telling you that you should run against President Johnson this year.
I have no plans. I have no plans to change the
statement that I've already made.
Will you endorse President Johnson this year, sir?
I've already made all the statements I'm going to. There's nothing I have to add.
Well, what about reports, sir, that you're going to meet with top California Democrats later today?
Well, I'm coming out for the strike at Delano for Mr. Chavez, and I'm going back this afternoon. He's been on a hunger strike and is committed to nonviolence, and I think that's terribly important.
We picked the center up the airport, and then we went and took him over to the place where Caesar was fasting. And of course, once we got there, it was nearly, I mean, everybody wanted to touch the senator, so the whole crowd pushed in.
The farm workers have suffered. People are frustrated. There is apt to be this explosion. What in the last analysis is the answer is that we pass the laws that will remedy the injustices. That's what those of us in Washington should do. We shouldn't just deplore the violence, deplore the lawlessness. We should pass the laws that remedy what people riot about.
People were just exuberant. There was just a lot of hope.
I was there in Delano at the end of Chavez fast. I remember Chavez was so sick and so weak from the fast.
And the senator made this beautiful talk.
We here in the United States are lucky and fortunate to have produced a man so committed to justice, to compassion, to honesty, to truth, and to service for all humanity. And that's Cesar Chavez.
I was translating for the senator, and they had given me his script, and of course he kept going off script, you know.
Mente se embrutes on Isus quer paz. Is that all right, Cesar? Am I destroying the language? Should I translate that into Spanish?
That bullshit.
I remember Bobby breaking the fast with bread.
And then after the mass ended, it just got crazy. And so then we had to get people around the senator that were going to crush him, you know. And it got really wild. People yelling, Kennedy for president, Kennedy for president, and we hadn't announced it to anybody. I was afraid for the senator's safety. We were always very careful about security because Caesar had a lot of death threats on him. I was there with the senator, and he saw a man, and he said, "Who is that man over there?" And I looked, and it was somebody I didn't recognize, and so they went right away and they got that man out of there. And then they got more security around the senator.
Thank you, Charlie.
The news conference of Senator Robert F. Kennedy, live from Washington.
Good morning. We are broadcasting this morning the announcement of Democratic Senator Robert F. Kennedy of New York that he will be a candidate for the presidency. The senator is doing so in the face of almost solid opposition from the Democratic Party professionals. He's also making the announcement in the opposition of thousands of young Democrats who claim that Kennedy has become an opportunist trying to cash in on the courage of Eugene McCarthy.
The whole thing is one of the most extraordinary political and human dramas, I think, in the history of American politics.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. I run because I am convinced that this country is on a perilous course. I have seen the inexcusable and ugly deprivation which causes children to starve in Mississippi, black citizens to riot in Watts, young Indians commit suicide on their reservations because they've lacked all hope, and proud and able-bodied families who wait out their lives in empty idleness in eastern Kentucky.
Bobby went into the fight for the nomination overnight. There was no big planning basis, no big offices around the country, no money raised. Overnight, he suddenly had to run a presidential campaign that was already in full blast.
Did the volunteers answer? No, they never. Okay, I'll give Ricky.
I was a coordinator of field operations. So people had to come to me, get the buttons, get the petitions. The first strategy was, Lyndon Johnson is going to play hardball. Get ready. You're taking a big risk here. You are going against a sitting president, a powerful, vindictive, mean sitting president, a war president, a powerful president who hates you. You're taking him on. And there was a sense of foreboding. So there was nervousness, and a lot of phone calls come to the office. How dare he do this? He promised he wouldn't use this as a stepping stone, and yet he is. And why did he wait? And McCarthy is doing very well now. Why is he stabbing McCarthy in the back? Why is he doing this?
What do you think about Bobby Kennedy?
I know that I wouldn't vote for him, and I don't particularly care for his views and what he's running for.
I think that he has a rather poor national image. I'm absolutely against Bobby Kennedy, and I'm against all the candidates. I think we've had our fill.
I think we can find answers to these problems. I think we can make progress. I don't come to the American people and say that the problems are easy or that the solutions will come easily. But I do think that we can do better.
He's been held back for months wanting to take on Johnson, and it's just ready to come out.
I think what we have to accept is what President Kennedy said in 1963. This is their war. We can help them, but we can't win it for them. And I think over the period of the last 3 years, we decided that we can win it for them, that it's a war of attrition, as General Westmoreland said. We'll kill 10 of them for every one they kill of us, and therefore we'll win. I don't think that's a policy that makes any sense, and I don't think that it'll have any success.
This is no time to tear the nation apart when we are not only in a desperate Vietnam war, but in an undeclared war with communism all over the world. You know, Bobby reminds me of Bugs Bunny, jumping around in the Family Foundation jet plane from place to place, with screaming crowds of youngsters, dividing the country at the wrong time. I stand with my president, and I stand with my government. And I think that the time has come when we've got to close ranks.
Eugene McCarthy became the symbol of anti-Vietnam.
The killing in Vietnam could be brought to an end.
And that cost Robert Kennedy a lot. Young people who should have been his natural allies, who Bobby should have counted on a year before, who would have been marching in the streets for him, really felt angry.
The idealistic youth kind of resent his stepping in after McCarthy put his career on the line and then made a good showing, and then all of a sudden Kennedy's in there sort of, at least it looks like he's trying to push him out of the way.
Do you think the entrance of Senator Kennedy into this is making your job more difficult, and of course Senator McCarthy?
Yes. Meanwhile, Johnson would make the argument, I've done one hell of a job that everybody had to admit except for Vietnam.
I think what we've got to do is get out of the posture of just being the war candidate that McCarthy has put us in, and Bobby's putting us in, the kids are putting us in. Yeah, that's right. I think you put your finger right on it. So that we can say we're the peace candidate, but we're the true peace candidate.
But no one could believe what happened next.
On Sunday evening, March 31st, President Lyndon Johnson almost casually set the stage for one of the most startling and unexpected announcements ever made by an American president.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
I'll never forget the night Lyndon Johnson dropped out. What a night that was. I will never forget that for as long as I live. We were stunned. It was euphoric. We can't believe this happened. It's like, ding dong, the witch is dead. And yet we had this sense that this is going to make it harder in many ways. He doesn't, he doesn't have, McCartney's not the enemy. And then Robert Kennedy comes to LaGuardia. We were screaming, going wild. He had a look on his face I'll never forget. And it was a look of, now what? I don't have someone to run against. What do I do? He knew right away. His political brain was processing. This is not all good that Johnson has dropped out.
Vice President Humphrey joined the fight.
Seek the nomination of the Democratic Party.
Hubert Humphrey was a much tougher candidate in many ways than Johnson, because he had a reputation, a liberal, decent, wonderful man, and he had the formal Democratic Party behind him.
Great national interest swung to Indiana when it became evident this primary would offer the first toe-to-toe meeting between Senators Kennedy and McCarthy.
Good afternoon, Kennedy headquarters.
When he announced that he was running for president, I sent a telegram to him saying, I'm ready to help whatever I can do. And they asked me to go to Indiana to organize a rally in Indianapolis. People started gathering. In some way, we heard that Dr. King had been shot. And there was some debate about whether Robert Kennedy should come and speak. It may be too dangerous for him. I, for one, insisted that he must come and speak to this crowd.
I have already They know about Martin Luther King. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm only going to talk to you just for a minute or so this evening because I have some very sad news for all of you. Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and distrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. My favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote, even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
On that evening, he didn't have a manuscript, but a written statement. He had a little piece of paper that he quoted a poem. After the rally was over, he invited several of us to his hotel room, but several of us cried with him. And when he came to Atlanta before the funeral, Robert Kennedy was one of the few white politicians in America to be able to walk through the heart of the African American community in downtown Atlanta with hundreds and thousands of people. I stayed in Atlanta for a few days after the funeral. Then I got back on the campaign trail.
Leading into the May 3rd Indiana primary, the heart of his support is people of color, African American, Latino.
Robert Kennedy is the only man on the current political structure that can do the job that we need done.
Is there a second choice?
There is no second choice as far as we're concerned.
Gary is over 50% Negro, but Indiana generally is 93% white. Kennedy is aware that his popularity with Negroes could hurt him with white voters.
Indiana was a conservative state that had the establishment against him.
I think we've got to preserve the family-type farm so that the farmer and his wife can pass the farm on to the next generation. And I'm co-sponsoring the bill giving farmers the right to bargain.
How can we make the people in the city understand our problems?
If the farmer does well in Indiana, we're going to do better in New York.
But white working class people, of whom I was one, there was something about him being a tough guy that we liked. He wasn't like a bleeding heart liberal. That was the expression back then. He was a tough dude.
This rioting, it seems like there's no law and order anymore. The cops have to stand around and watch all this looting going on.
We might have some law and order in the United States. That's what we have to establish, that we won't tolerate lawlessness, violence, and disorder.
I mean, we've got to get this stopped. It's going to get out of hand completely.
I agree. I think we just have to make sure that people have jobs.
Unlike others who would try to pit the working class against the poor, his theme in '68 was reconciliation.
I've seen children here in the United States starving, whether it be in eastern Kentucky, whether it be on some of our Indian reservations, or whether it be in the Delta area of Mississippi. Young children starving to death.
We can't afford to hate each other. We can't afford to be divided.
And we have the determination, we have the faith, and we have people just so eager to do everything. And so I'm sure that he can unite us all.
Mrs. Kennedy is a veteran of the campaign trail. Her appearances at affairs like this helped elect another son president in 1960, and those memories must come flooding back on days like this.
Hello, glad to see you. How are you? Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming today.
It's the rich people
I
that
want
want
to
to do
thank all of those who have involved themselves in this campaign in Indiana. As we talk about just healing divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites or between age groups, the fact is that in this campaign we talked about them openly and truthfully and with candor, and we talked about what can be done about them. And I think that's a great step forward. And I intend to go on trying to do that in the state of Nebraska, in the state of Oregon, and the state of California, and I hope to have the same success.
He wins Indiana, he wins Nebraska. He's on a roll.
Senator Robert F. Kennedy opens his bid for votes in the Oregon Democratic primary. It won't be easy.
My name is Robert Kennedy. I was hoping somebody would come along and say, I now introduce you as the next president of the United States, but nobody seems to have showed up. Thank you.
4 very loyal supporters, brought right from New York City.
What do you think about Bobby Kennedy?
With Kennedy running, I think it will cause a very great split. And just like Nixon, Kennedy says the war has to end in Vietnam, but he really hasn't given any positive solutions.
And I've asked myself what Senator Kennedy of New York has really brought to the campaign.
Senator McCarthy is outdrawing Robert Kennedy here in Oregon, and all consider this most unusual. In fact, it's giving McCarthy more confidence.
I wondered about Senator Kennedy bringing the dog into the campaign. I have a dog. I think a better dog than his, but...
Robert F. Kennedy is now coming up the street if you would like to meet with him. Senator Robert F. Kennedy is now coming up the street.
I was working for the Kennedy campaign in Oregon, and everybody knew this was going to be a tough place to win. It was a mostly white state, very small minority population, so it didn't have a natural base.
Good umbrella.
There was some stupid incident where Senator Kennedy went running on the beach in his bare feet with his dog, and some Oregonians took offense at that. God knows why, I have no idea.
How well do you expect to do in this primary?
I can't lose. I mean, I can't afford to lose if I'm going to remain a very active and viable candidate.
We were concerned. Some people probably thought he shouldn't have even campaigned in Oregon because California was coming up a week later. There was no space. It wasn't like there was going to be 3 more weeks and this was going to be dragged out. It was like 1 more week and it was over, and everybody, I think, felt if you win California, that's going to be decisive.
And I think that we can have a success here in the United States. I think we can win here in the state of Oregon. Well, if I hit the right inflection, you know that you're supposed to clap.
He proceeded to lose his first election in Oregon. He lost. No Kennedy ever lost.
Why did I lose? Just because I didn't do well enough. I mean, there wasn't any, I could just, the only fall to blame is me. I suppose I'd say, as Abraham Lincoln said about the man who was carried out on a steel rail out of the city, and said that except for the honor, I'd like to have passed it up. But that's the same way I feel about Oregon. Except for the distinction of being the first Kennedy to lose. I just as soon have passed.
The beginning of what Senator Kennedy hopes to be a comeback trail, a comeback that will somehow offset his stunning loss to Gene McCarthy in Oregon. Kennedy plainly intends to go for growth here in California, where anything short of a very big win will almost certainly end his own White House dream.
I appreciate all the nice signs and then the signs that are not as much of my support. I had a little event at my own home when I took a poll amongst my children. I did well. I got 4 votes. And 2 went for my brother Teddy. 2 went for my sister Pat. And 2 of them said they were reassessing their position. So I'm going to tell them I had a nice welcome in San Diego.
To stay as a leading contender, Kennedy must not only win in California, but win big. He knows it.
Good afternoon, Kennedy for President. May I help you? Thank you.
And that's why he concentrates on these wellsprings of his greatest strength, the minority group members. There are millions of them in this state. Indians, Orientals, more than 1 million Negroes, 1 3/4 million Latins. By past performance and the polls, overwhelmingly for Kennedy.
only 40% of the men that live in the ghetto have jobs that pay more than $60 a week. How can you support a family? How can you bring up children in dignity? But they feel that their children can't get a decent education? Do they want to accept that?
In California, I teamed up with Cesar Chavez, the two of us, knocking on doors, saying we're campaigning for Robert Kennedy, will you support him? And then we participated in a motorcade. It was unreal. People was pulling all sides.
The minute we knew that the Senate was going to run, we just started mobilizing. It was all so fast, you know. I was put in charge of just setting up all of these rallies up and down the valley.
Cesar Chavez and his colleagues here in California, they really started a revolution, which was a revolution for human dignity.
People wanted to see him win. The only thing is, sometimes we would come back and give our reports, and several people gave this same report, that when they would knock on the doors of some of the older women, they would say, we don't want him to win. Why? Because if he wins, they're going to kill him.
You're on public view constantly. For example, when you visit San Francisco, as you are today, this must be a tremendous drain upon a person. Don't you sometimes cry out for privacy, or do you find it agreeable to be on public view?
No, I think that you like the privacy, and then you have some of that. But also, I think that what I say is satisfying, and what I think makes it worthwhile is just the fact that you feel that you can have an effect and perhaps do some good that involve other people. That there is some possibility that you make the right kind of an effort, that their lives are going to change, and that therefore their whole existence is going to change, and their children's lives are going to change.
You ever bothered with fears of failure?
Oh, I thought not fail, but I mean, I suppose that you're always taking that chance, aren't you? But I think that in all of these matters, if you're dealing with these kinds of subjects, you're always taking that chance, and you're taking the chance if you, I suppose, in political life, but in every aspect of one's existence, you take some chances. If you take a position on any matter, if you want to bring perhaps about changes or whatever you want to do, you're going to take the risk of your own personal life.
He knew every day was a day when he might get shot. Some Chinese firecrackers went off in that part of town. And he immediately ducked. He was constantly aware of it, but he never talked about it.
Because I think he had one time around, and I don't know what's going to be in existence in 6 months or a year. So I think that you're here on Earth to make some kind of contribution of some kind. So I'm impatient, and I suppose I would hope everybody be impatient.
Bob spent Tuesday, election day, out at John Frankenheimer's house in Malibu. Got up late, recuperating from the intensive campaigning that he'd been on for so long. After that, John Frankenheimer drove us into Los Angeles. Frankenheimer drove like a bat out of hell that night. He was all carried away himself, and most of the conversation was over what was going to happen after California.
I was doing my union work on election day, and I was going home because I hated victory parties, and turned on the radio and heard we were behind on the vote. I said, oh, I better go downtown to the Ambassador Hotel.
I was a young reporter covering the victory party. It was just wall-to-wall people. It was hot, and people just kept crowding in and crowding in and crowding in.
They're waiting for the results, which are coming in very slowly. With 10% of the votes counted, we might take a look at those boards and see what the score is. It's a very tight race now. McCarthy has 43%, just 1 percentage point more than Kennedy, with 42%, with that uncommitted slate there in the middle, which leans towards Vice President Humphrey.
I got down there, and that whole corridor, the fifth floor of the ambassador, was taken over by the Kennedy campaign. A lot of media people coming and going, Bob doing some interviews.
Senator Kennedy, how does it look to you in the southern section of the state?
Well, I think it's very difficult because of the, it's not like the used to be 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And maybe you wouldn't even know until tomorrow morning, but all of your electronic equipment knows much quicker than those of us in politics. So I can't really tell very much more than what I see on the various newsworks.
The newsworks, all right, but
is it?
If it works.
That's the end of the campaign.
When I found out that Bobby Kennedy is going to have his headquarters at the Ambassador Hotel, I never planned on meeting him. I was just so happy to be under the same roof, in the same building. So the opportunity came that we was going to take him a buffet table to his room. We got everything ready and then went up the service elevator. They opened up the door. Next thing I know, he turns around and just tells, "Come on in, boys." I was starstruck. And then he reached out, shook my hand with both hands. I felt so American. As American as everybody in the room. I walked out of there with my head high.
When I saw him up in the room, the numbers still hadn't come in. He was sort of amused. Not definitive, not full of predictions. More like, here it comes. That Irish fatalism.
McCarthy and Kennedy all evening have been trading 1 or 2 points back and forth. But McCarthy has never so far surrendered the lead.
Here at McCarthy headquarters, they're announcing a later total now. 126,037, 43% McCarthy. McCarthy is still ahead.
Finally, hours later, Bob got calls in saying that polls had closed in Watts, the African-American area, and also in the Latino area. So he sent runners out and find out why the polls had closed. And runners came back and said the polls are closed because 100% of the voters had already voted. So they had no more voters, which had never happened before in any election.
Final totals will be Kennedy 48%, Senator McCarthy 41%.
I was in the suite, and he joked with me. He said, "John, you let me down today. More Mexican American turn out to vote than Negroes." That's what he said. Then he said, "I'll be back. I'm going down to speak, and I'll be back."
The last thing he said to me was, "How's the food?" You know? How's the food?
The senator asked me to come with him to the podium.
Now Senator Kennedy is proceeding towards the ballroom where he will talk to his campaign workers. And here he is now. He's entering the ballroom, and you can hear the cheers from his supporters.
The crowd was really beside themselves. It was very exciting because by this time we were pretty sure that this was going to be the next president of the United States.
There was just a lot of hope. It was like everything that you could possibly hope and wish for was going to happen.
Thank you very much.
But then when we got to the podium, I thought, where's the security? There's no security. He just had any security. There was one person that was walking with him.
Can you hear on any of these?
But I didn't say anything.
Can you hear on that?
Because I didn't want to spoil the moment.
I thank all of you, those of you who are here. I want to express my gratitude to my dog Freckles, who's been maligned. I don't care what they... As Franklin Roosevelt said, I don't care what they say about me, but when they start to attack my dog. And I'm not doing this in the order of importance, but I also want to thank my wife, Ethel. I want to also thank all my friends in the black community and all of those Mexican Americans who were such supporters of mine. And Dolores Huerta, who's an old friend of mine and has worked with the union.
We were in such a dark period then in the United States of America. And then to have somebody there that was really going to be the savior, you might say, of our country, and especially for working people, and somebody that was strong and, you know, a real leader and a visionary.
And I want to also, if I may, just take a moment more of your time to express my appreciation to Paul Schrade. I'm very grateful to him and the effort that he's made on behalf of the working man here in the state of California.
It was just a wonderful, wonderful moment. A lot of young people cheering and crying and, you know, singing.
What I think is quite clear is that we can work together in the last analysis, and that what has been going on within the United States over the period of the last 3 years, the divisions, the violence, the disenchantment with our society, the divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites, between the poor and the more affluent, or between age groups, or in the war in Vietnam, that we can start to work together. We are a great country and a compassionate country, and I intend to make that my basis for running and over the period of next year. So I thank all of you who did all of the work at the precinct level, who got out the vote, who did all of the effort, brought forth all of the effort that's required. I was a campaign manager 8 years ago. I know what a difference that kind of an effort and that kind of commitment makes. My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
Right after the speech was over, I got off the platforms with the waiter doors, and Bob was taken off the back.
The plan was that after he spoke, my job was to take the senator over to the ballroom. We had a mariachi band that was waiting there for him. But as we left the podium, they said, "Senator, come to the kitchen." And then one of our staff, they caught my arm and said, "Hey, Dolores, what happened? You're supposed to be taking him to the ballroom." I said, I'm going to take him to the kitchen. And then I couldn't catch up with the senator after that.
He is now moving out of the ballroom with Ethel, his wife. And there is one more little chore for him before Chicago. He's going on to New York, where he faces several delegate contests there, 123, I believe.
When they got down to the bottom of the stairs behind the platform, I was standing in the kitchen pantry area, and Bob came through the door. I then got right behind Bob as he was shaking hands with a couple of workers in the kitchen.
Bobby came to the kitchen. I could see that he was reaching out to everybody. I remember saying to myself, I said, "Reach as far as you can to make sure you don't miss shaking his hand." Once I felt his strong shake, I let go. That's when I heard a noise.
And when Bobby turns this way, I heard the pops.
I thought they were firecrackers. I heard like da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da.
At that point, I just saw flashes of light and started trembling violently and fell on the floor.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? Is that possible? Oh, my God.
I seen the senator on the floor. I I thought I could always help him get up a little, but once I stood over him, I could tell that he was in no shape of getting up, so I kneeled down and tried to separate his head from the cold concrete, thinking that he was just knocked out. I put my hand a little lower to his neck. I could feel the warm blood coming. I just, I couldn't believe it. That's when I remembered that I had the rosary. I felt my rosary in my pocket and put it on his hands. I wrapped it around his thumb. Then I seen his lips move. So I put my ear next to him, and I distinctly heard him say, "Is everybody okay?"
Johnson has a hold of a man who apparently has fired the shot. He has fired the shot. He still has the gun. The gun is pointed at me at this moment. I hope they can get the gun out of his hand. Be very careful. Get the gun. Get the gun. His hand is frozen. Get his thumb. Get his thumb. Get his thumb. Get hold of his thumb and break it if you have to. Get his thumb. Hold him. Hold him. Hold him. We don't want another Oswald. Hold him, Murphy. We don't want another Oswald.
Police department.
Ambassador Hotel. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
They have an emergency. We want the police to the kitchen right away.
What kind of an emergency?
I don't know, honey. There's some kind of an emergency. I don't know what happened. You know, we have a Kennedy member here tonight.
You have what?
Mr. Kennedy here.
Big deal.
What happened, but it's something.
All right.
You want me to find out what it is?
Yes, please.
Hold on. I think somebody was shot.
Oh, great.
Great. You want me to suicide?
Yes, ma'am.
I remember very clearly looking down. I could see Robert Kennedy's eyes. There was an accepting look in his face, like he knew what had happened.
At 3400 Wilshire Boulevard, the shooting was of Senator Bob Kennedy. The suspect is in custody.
The suspect is in our custody now. We do not know who he is.
This unknown assailant.
There is not yet an official identification of the suspect.
He refuses to make a statement of any kind. He does speak and understand English.
He is, of course, being removed to the Los Angeles jail.
And after he'd been seized and turned over to police, taken outside the hotel, the crowd there seemed to many eyewitnesses to want to lynch him. But the police did get him into the car.
We're asking the press to also move back, please. Everybody, please move back.
We have the area around the hotel secured, and no one is entering or leaving.
We do have the gun. It's a small caliber pistol. And we have the names of several people, 4 people to be exact, who were injured.
Where were you when this shooting occurred?
I was directly behind the senator, about 3 or 4 people behind him, when I heard the firecracker barrage of shots.
And what happened?
Well, everybody was in the main room, listening to him speak. And it was too hot, so I went outside, and I was out on the terrace.
All of a sudden, there was a rat-a-tat-tat sound, and it almost sounded to me like 8 shots, but I know everybody said there were many fewer, so I must be wrong about that.
The guy must have just squeezed them off as fast as he possibly could. And if there were two people, that would account for the seemingly sequence of shots.
Then this girl came running down the stairs in the back, came running down the stairs and said, "We've shot him, we've shot him." And I said, "Who did you shoot?" And she said, "We shot Senator Kennedy." And after she had, I can remember what she had on and everything. She had on a white dress with polka dots. She was light-skinned, dark hair. She had black shoes on. And after that, a boy came down with her. He was about 23 years old, and he was Mexican-American.
One of the men who's been traveling with Senator Kennedy and trying to help him in his presidential campaign is Charles Evers. His brother, Medgar Evers, was assassinated 5 years ago when he was the state field secretary for the NAACP in Jackson, Mississippi. Charles Evers was just going into the banquet room this evening when he heard the shots.
Senator Kennedy had the same feeling that his brother had, that my brother had, that we got to change this country and make it a country of all the people and for all the people. And America just not ready for that. Any man who stands up and speak out for this and bleed black or white is subject to be killed.
At my side here is Dr. Ross Miller. He is one of the physicians, he's a surgeon from Los Angeles, one of the first who came to Senator Kennedy's side. Can you describe?
My father was at the Ambassador Hotel. He was one of the first doctors to get to Senator Kennedy.
There were a mass of blood, and he had head injuries. The extent of them could not be ascertained immediately.
He said, I got to him, I checked him out, I made him comfortable. There was nothing else I could do.
Was he fully conscious, Doctor?
No.
Please open aisleway. We have a doctor coming through.
There's a spokesman now, Frank Mankiewicz, the Senator's press secretary.
Team of 6 neurosurgeons will start to operate on Senator Kennedy in about 5 or 10 minutes. Breathing is good and unassisted. His heart is good. He's unconscious, and the doctors describe his condition as very critical.
They believe the operation will probably take 45 minutes or an hour. Mrs. Kennedy is with the Senator. Frank Mankiewicz has just returned to this press room with the additional information that Senator Ted Kennedy was there, too.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968.
I was in the hospital and got into surgery. I came to bandages on my head. Friends told me the bad news that Robert Kennedy had died, and I just turned away from him and just...
At Los Angeles International Airport, there was a press area set up, and we all watched as the Kennedy clan went on the plane with the casket and then watched the plane leave. I dictated my story from there, and I started dictating when the plane banked for the east, and I cried. When the plane banked to the east, I knew it was over.
I left the next morning, and I think I cried all the way for Mom. From L.A. to Atlanta, and I could still see the snow. Now this is June. I could still see the snow on the mountains, and I kept saying to myself, what is happening in America? To lose Martin Luther King Jr. and 2 months later, it's too much.
Jack Kennedy had been killed, Martin King had been killed, Malcolm X had been killed. It was like some kind of shooting gallery instead of a civilization.
My brother need not be idealized. Be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
Following the Requiem Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, the senator's body will be taken on a train from New York to Washington.
I remember being on the train, feeling horrible. It's like losing a family member.
We walked up and down the train, and then starting in New Jersey, maybe Newark, you started to see people were on the train tracks, hanging from the rafters. Nobody had any clue what kind of reaction there was going to be. People inside the train were also overwhelmed by the response of average people. The people that were out there, that was the campaign.
You get near Washington, I had this feeling I didn't want the train to stop, but I knew we had to stop. I just wanted to keep going, but we had to take him to be buried.
There we said, this is the train, sliding slowly, at long last. Perhaps you can hear the bell clanging. These are old colleagues of John Kennedy, of Robert Kennedy. Were you able to tell how Mrs. Kennedy is holding up?
Seemed to me to be holding up astonishingly well. She talked to each of us who had known her or the senator at all over the years, had a word for each, remembered the special circumstances of their having met the last time. Really quite remarkable for a woman who's been through what she's been through in the last few days.
came to an end with his lying next to his brother in Arlington Cemetery. His death left a tremendous vacuum. The big question became the future of the Democratic Party and the future of the country.
Now is no time to drop out of politics. Now is the time for people to pick up the torch, to continue the principles and to try and get those principles adopted which Robert Kennedy stood for.
This is the site of the temporary courtroom here in the chapel of the Los Angeles County Central Jail, where 24-year-old Sirhan Bishara Sirhan was arraigned on a charge of murdering Robert F. Kennedy.
I'd like to see that this man gets the fairest trial that can possibly be given. He's another human being in trouble.
What was your reaction to the shooting of Senator Kennedy?
Well, I woke up this morning with a telephone call from a friend of mine, and he told me, and I was just really shocked, and I turned the television. I watched reports come in, and the more I heard it, the more I realized that it was true, and I just couldn't believe that something like this could happen in our society today, especially after Martin Luther King and President Kennedy before him. It just shakes you up.
It's hard to believe that all this misfortune has happened to one family. Such tragedy. You can't get over it. That's all.
Near the Kennedy compound in Hyannis this morning, Mrs. Rose Kennedy left church, wrapped in the lonely sorrow of grief and the silent shock that yet another son fell by an assailant's bullets. At St. Francis Xavier's Roman Catholic Church, back at the family home on the Cape, her husband, former Ambassador Joseph P. Kennedy, wept in his wheelchair.
What was your reaction to this event? Well, it's still one of disbelief, of course, for everybody in this country and for those of Virginia. We still, this morning, if we wake up from this nightmare that the country and the world is beset by today.
What about all the past events that have happened of this nature that just recently?
It seems to me like a pattern, that look as if anytime you're doing something for poor people or something, you're shot.
I can't understand what's happening to this country. You get up in the morning and you hear things like this. You can't run for president. You can't walk the streets. You might as well barricade yourself.
What about the country?
Oh, I think everything's all mixed up. Don't you?
The gentleman we have in custody is Sirhan Bishara, B-I-S-H-A-R-A, Sirhan. It's our understanding that Sirhan was living with his brother Munir, M-U-N-I-R.
The day of the assassination, I went to work. On my arrival to work, there's a small coffee table with a TV on it, and everybody was eyeing the TV. So I went and got my cup of coffee. The minute I sat down, I heard Senator Kennedy has been shot. And then they showed a picture of my brother, Sirhan.
24-year-old Sirhan Bishara Sirhan. He was born in Jordan in 1944 and was admitted to the United States as a permanent resident in January of 1957. He is not a United States citizen.
When I first saw that on the TV, my heart was running. I couldn't believe it. And I ran down to the police station. and went up to the desk and said, "I think my brother shot Senator Kennedy." Oh, yeah, it's a different world.
This morning, police searched Tehran's residence in Pasadena and found the notebook in the suspect's room mentioning the, quote, necessity to assassinate Senator Kennedy.
He seemed very quiet, what you might call clean cut.
He just made you feel uncomfortable when he was around. He never talked to you, just hello.
Here in the Los Angeles County Central Jail, 24-year-old Sirhan Bishara Sirhan entered the courtroom. The judge ordered the reading of the indictment, the one count of murder of Robert Francis Kennedy, and counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to commit murder.
With Sirhan having given up the right to be brought to trial within 60 days after his arraignment, it appears now that he won't be brought before the courts before September.
It was awful. I couldn't even say the name of the accused. I just said, this is it. This country, you can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. I was in a deep, dark, bad place. Then the next question is, all right, now what do we? So we regrouped. We had a couple of, we called it the Kennedy Action Corps to try to keep us all together.
Excuse me, sir. Would you like to sign?
Not right now.
Okay, fine, thank you.
We did our best, but our hearts weren't in it.
Somehow, in some way, I made a decision that I would not become bitter or hostile, that I would just throw myself in the fight. I went back to Georgia and I ran as a delegate to the Democratic Convention that was held in Chicago.
Good evening from Chicago, where the 35th National Democratic Convention opens tomorrow with the promise of turmoil inside this hall and a threat of violence without.
Some 6,000 crack Army troops, riot-trained and ready for action, moved out to secret locations around the city. They will stand by for duty if the 15,000 Chicago police and Illinois National Guardsmen cannot control the invading anti-war, anti-Humphrey forces.
There had been warnings that the hippies, the yippies, and various assortments of far-out leftist and anti-war groups would storm the convention and prevent it from nominating a candidate for President of the United States.
Bobby's death left a tremendous vacuum in the Democratic Party. So Hubert Humphrey went to Chicago, assured of the nomination.
Humphrey arrived in Chicago this afternoon, smiling and confident.
The big question became the party's position in Vietnam. So I went to Chicago, and I played a role in leading the anti-Vietnam War platform discussions.
Vietnam has been grabbed by McCarthy's strategists as their crowbar to break apart this Humphrey convention. In addition, there remains the strong influence of the Kennedy wing, which generally has coalesced behind Senator McGovern.
Those were the twin goals to which Senator Kennedy gave his life. An end to the slaughter abroad, but of equal importance, an end to injustice, a healing of the divisions in our own society here in America.
Almost immediately, the convention spun out of control.
I know you won't, but don't quickly take your hands off of me unless you plan to arrest me. Wait a minute.
It's been like this for 3 straight nights. Confrontations between youthful demonstrators and Chicago's police department.
Go ahead, come on, do it, officer. Come on, let's show the world, come on.
The Federal Commission later called it a police riot.
We lost Robert Kennedy on a kitchen floor. Then these old men who run the Democratic Party dug in and put their heads down like buffalo. These old Democrats are occupational illiterates. Now, when they're old, They resist the new.
I just leading the senator from Louisiana said to me, there's only one man who can win this election, and that's Ted Kennedy. Then we met with Eugene McCarthy, and McCarthy said, you know, I will step aside and have Ted Kennedy nominated, and I think we can do that. So I called Ted and told him that. There's a great deal of feeling that I can see that if you were available, you'd be nominated tomorrow night. Teddy told me that Hubert Humphrey had come to see him in Washington before the convention and had offered to nominate him as vice president. And that Humphrey would serve one term and let Kennedy carry on from there.
Our delegation was part of a challenge delegation. I had a half vote, and I cast my half vote for Ted Kennedy, almost as a memorial to Robert Kennedy.
But then he didn't want it. He absolutely said no. The pain, the grief was all too fresh. All too fresh.
I proudly accept the nomination of our party.
The events of the past 2 days speak louder than anything we can say. I am grieved tonight by the memory of great Americans departed who sit on my back and watch over all of us because we're Democrats because of them. I remember and shed my heart to Eleanor Roosevelt and what she was to the Democratic Party. And I worry and grieve over Bob Kennedy and what he would be feeling and saying were he here tonight and all the things that he did to try to build bridges between our people to end in the kind of shambles that was perpetrated tonight uptown and in this convention hall.
So tonight, Hubert Humphrey accepts their nomination. He will run against Richard Nixon in the race the young people sneer at.
The convention cost the Democratic Party.
Richard Nixon was campaigning for law and order.
Never in this century has there been a campaign in which the American people had a clearer choice than in the campaign of 1968.
We elected Richard Nixon.
So help me God.
Ethel Kennedy gave birth to a baby girl this morning at 8:40 a.m. here in Georgetown University Hospital. And the condition of both Mrs. Kennedy and the baby is excellent.
We want to say how happy we are today, and I told Ethel that I think Joan and I are going to take this baby home. We think Ethel has enough of them at home anyway.
After the shooting, I had a long recovery period. I actually took off work for 4 or 5 months. I was weak and out of it. I just wanted to stay away from everything. The loss was so terrific. I was staying at my parents' place in Oceanside, California, but I came back to LA because I was scheduled to testify in the trial of Sirhan.
After numerous delays, the trial of Sirhan began almost 7 months from the day Robert Kennedy was shot. The prosecution is said to be trying for the death penalty. The defense is said to be trying for a murder without malice verdict.
We'd be naive if we weren't aware of the fact that This trial will be observed, the investigation observed by millions of people.
It was the highest security trial I ever saw. I was frisked 5 times in the first day or so. They were so worried about what would happen to Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas, they wanted no repeat of that. There were 3 defense lawyers rounded up by the ACLU, led by a veteran Los Angeles murder defense attorney named Grant B. Cooper.
Oh, you know what you remind me of? It's like that woman that was underneath the cow. Cow said, just a minute, boys, I'll take you on one at a time. Thank you very much.
The very first time I met Cooper, he sat in his office. He was a pipe smoker. He lights his pipe. There was 2 newspaper publications there. And he says, everybody says he did it. The papers say he did it. Can't deny it.
I think everybody knows how it happened. We've read about it in the papers. We've seen it on TV. That's not going to be a real issue in the case.
We have to plead him guilty, try to save his life.
Go ahead. Don't rush. Don't fight over me, girls. I'll go home alone.
The defense lawyers were really working to get to a plea deal with the prosecution, to get death off the table. But you also have to realize that you may not get to that point. And so you have to go on a parallel track and say, what am I going to do not only to investigate this case and protect my client, but also be prepared to try this case. But this defense team was so focused on the negotiation track, they were ignoring the trial track and doing things that I think are questionable at best.
Try to stay almost awake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try to go into a very light sleep. That's it. Now try to picture in your mind the scene.
Before the trial, they had these psychiatrists hypnotizing Mr. Sirhan, and then not eliciting from him, they're actually putting words in his mouth.
You're in the kitchen there. You're standing in the corner. There's lots of people around. A lot of noise. And you see Kennedy coming. Now what do you see, Sirhan? You're back in the kitchen there. What do you see? You're back in the kitchen, Sirhan. Kennedy is coming toward you. Look at his face. Take the gun out of your pants. You got the gun in your hand now. Let me see you shoot the gun, Sirhan. Shoot the gun. Shoot the gun. Sirhan, take the gun out and shoot it. You're shooting Kennedy now, huh? His fingers are going through the spasmodic movements like pulling a trigger.
The entire episode was problematic. And when the plea agreement wasn't accepted, they had to scramble to actually get ready for trial, and they had put their client in such a bad position.
Don't blame the defense for this, because we agreed to plead guilty to first-degree murder and take life, and the judge wouldn't do it. It was our fault.
Finally, the trial started, and the prosecution had to reconstruct the crime.
A model was made to show where every witness stood in the kitchen at the time of the crime. As he was coming along, he was reaching over, shaking hands with the different kitchen help, and continued shaking hands and walking this way. When he reached a point somewhere in here, he reached over to shake hands with one of the kitchen help, and the suspect apparently came from back over in this area and approached and reached up and fired at the senator at fairly close range.
When I walked into the trial, I testified of what I knew, which wasn't very much.
I really was hit very early and went out, and so I had no impression there was a gun or anybody shooting at us until I was told that after I regained consciousness.
But when I looked at Sirhan, I didn't have any hate feelings at all. I just wanted to understand what was going on more with him and what he had against Kennedy.
at this critical point in the trial, there were so many things the defense could have pursued and didn't.
Mr. Cooper, what was your strategy in neglecting to cross-examine the last three witnesses? Any particular reason?
Can you see what advantage it would have been to cross-examine them? Could we have developed anything? They told the truth.
When you look at the medical examiner's testimony in the courtroom, he talked about gunshot residue on Senator Kennedy's ear.
The muzzle distance would be a 1 inch from the right ear and no more than 3 inches.
Witnesses said that he was 3 feet away, maybe 10 feet away.
How far would the gun muzzle be from Senator Kennedy's head?
About 1.5 feet, I would say 1.5 feet, 2 feet.
There's an indication there might be multiple people, multiple shooters.
If there were 2 people, that would account for the seemingly sequence of shots.
Some witnesses said that there was a woman in a polka dot dress who was near Sirhan.
This girl said, "We've shot him. We've shot him." She had on a white dress with polka dots.
Next thing I knew, I was in a room with other people waiting to be interviewed by LAPD. It was very stressful, just horribly, horribly stressful. They did not want to follow up on anything. They wanted to wrap it up. They didn't want another Dallas. You know, they didn't want a lot of people going out there talking about conspiracy theories.
Did anybody from the defense team ever contact you?
No one from the defense team, no one from any team contacted me.
Morning, gentlemen.
The defense testimony started with the description of what was happening in the Middle East when Sirhan was growing up as a child.
He testified to the living conditions, how the people died of starvation, that they didn't have enough food.
He was a refugee in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, became anti-Israel, anti-Zionist.
The life of this puzzling young man is slowly and painstakingly being reconstructed. The surface facts are easily gathered. He lived in this small, unassuming home. He walked the streets daily of this quiet, working-class Pasadena neighborhood.
The family's lived in this house since 1962. And look at the lemons here. This thing's got to be over 100 years old. Sirhan used to like to sit under here, and every time I'd work on the lemon tree, I'd think of Sirhan. Well, we were very joyful. The whole family had to come to America, except Sirhan. The night that we were to leave to come to America, he ran away. Finally, early morning, like about a half hour before we were to get on the ship to come here, we finally found him. And we all arrived here as a family. In the beginning, it was a struggle, but we were happy. We were making progress. You know, we were getting there. We used to rent. We bought a home eventually. We had a lot of friends. And then Senator's death occurred. The family was so shocked. And each of us, you know, like, what did we do? What is it something I did? Is it something Mother did? Is it something Adele did? That resulted in Sirhan doing what he was doing. We were guilt-ridden. Not now. So many memories, good and bad. We have the touring buses that come here. You know, they come by and people come out, they snap pictures, they stake around for about 5 or 10 minutes. One fellow asked me, "Hey, is this a Sirhan house?" I just kept, walking. No English, no English. No English.
Cooper? Mr. Cooper, can you talk here for a second?
Grant Cooper evolved a defense of what's known in California law as diminished capacity or diminished responsibility, basically trying to portray Sirhan as mentally ill.
The defendant, by reason of mental illness, intoxication, or any other cause, cannot materially or meaningfully premeditate and deliberate.
Mr. Sirhan is a borderline personality with marked paranoid features.
His condition started to deteriorate
through a schizophrenic illness.
Sirhan just hated the attorney's strategy of diminished capacity.
I assume that he felt that it demeaned him.
There were a couple of times where Sirhan had outbursts in the court. Well, one time he was so angry at a ruling by the judge, letting in his journals as evidence. The journals had said RFK must die.
On May 18th of this year, you were sitting writing in a notebook in your room, and your words are, my determination to kill RFK is becoming more the more an obsession. And you fill the page with Robert F. Kennedy must die, RFK must die, Robert F. Kennedy must be assassinated, Robert F. Kennedy must be assassinated. You were planning to kill Senator Kennedy.
Only in my mind.
Well, that's the only place you can plan it.
Not to do it physically. I never thought of doing it. I don't see myself as doing it. I don't have the guts to do anything like that.
When we get to the point where they make the decision to put Sirhan on the stand, it's just a mind-boggling choice. And they knew that all he could say was that I don't remember. It did nothing to create a feeling of empathy in the jury.
All right, Sirhan, now, on the night of the assassination, you said you went to the Ambassador Hotel, had a few drinks, and you said you were too drunk to drive home, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, what happened?
I started searching for coffee. That was all what I wanted to do. And I found some.
Out in the kitchen area.
But where, I don't remember, sir.
In a kitchen-type room, though?
I don't remember where I saw it, but I remember getting the cup. It was a shining...
Large urn?
Urn. And there was a girl there.
All right, after you poured coffee for the girl, then, what happened?
Then I don't remember much what happened after that.
You don't remember much what happened?
I don't remember.
Do you remember anything that happened after that?
Other than the choking and the commotion. I don't remember that.
The being choked. Yes.
Being choked, yes.
Your job as the defense lawyer really is to contest the evidence, to question it, to poke holes in it. These lawyers just did not do that.
Sirhan, if you had 3 wishes now, what would they be?
First wish, then. I wish that Senator Kennedy was still alive. I wish that every day that I've been. Second one,
It was sort of like after lunch, kind of a sleepy part of the afternoon, maybe 1 p.m., when there was a buzz from the jury room. Word soon came that a verdict had been reached. Everybody streamed into the courtroom. There was very, very high tension as we waited for Sirhan to be brought in.
What did you say to him before it came in? Did you give him any pep talk?
I simply told him that no matter what happened, not to make a fuss and to act like a man.
It was kind of a no-brainer, I think, for the jury.
Jurors were looking at their faces, and all of them were just looking at him like, what do you take us for, a bunch of suckers?
The court clerk read the verdict and was guilty. And then, what is the sentence? Life or death?
This morning, a letter from Senator Kennedy was delivered to me. Senator Ted Kennedy says he would not have wanted his death to be a cause for the taking of another life. My brother was a man of love and sentiment and compassion. It amounts to a recommendation that Sirhan not be executed.
After all was said and done, he got the death penalty. We sensed that it was coming, but we were hoping for that it wouldn't.
It was maximum penalty for a maximum crime. What one thing, if you can put or assess it this way, do you think
gave the case for the prosecution?
I think it was the underlying and overriding feeling of the community, the entire United States, of law and order. I think it's the unrest in universities that have caused a backlash that has subconsciously seeped into the minds of the jurors. Now, for the first time, they are called upon to uphold the law. And I feel, without any sense of criticism of the jury, that it was up to them to do their duty to uphold the law to the fullest.
The problem that we had in the Sirhan trial was that after all of the assassinations and all of the conversations about conspiracies, we wanted it to stop. We wanted to find one person who did it and hold him liable for it and then put him away. And so we don't know what happened. We are left with so many questions about what went on. And we will never know because we actually didn't take the time when we could to figure out what was going on. We were duped as a public that wanted answers, and we didn't get them.
From 1968 to 1976, politics changed, the country changes, the light just kind of gradually dims.
My fellow citizens, this morning I entered a plea of guilty to the charge of leaving the scene of an accident. On Chappaquiddick Island, off Martha's Vineyard, I attended on Friday evening, July 18th, a cookout for a devoted group of Kennedy campaign secretaries. When I left the party around 11:15 p.m., I was accompanied by one of these girls, Miss Mary Jo Kopechne. Mary Jo was one of the most devoted members of the staff of Senator Robert Kennedy, who was broken up over his death. A little over 1 mile away, the car that I was driving, on an unlit road, went off a narrow bridge. The car overturned in a deep pond and immediately filled with water. But somehow I struggled to the surface alive. I made immediate and repeated efforts to save Mary Jo by diving into the strong and murky current, but succeeded only in increasing my state of utter exhaustion. I regard as indefensible the fact that I did not report the accident to the police immediately. All kinds of scrambled thoughts went through my mind during this period, including such questions as whether the girl might still be alive somewhere out of that immediate area, whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys.
Nearly 500,000 kids jammed onto a 600-acre dairy farm near Woodstock, New York in August '69.
What's happening to America?
I tend to believe that America's lost its way. I think that we're off the track. We're not sure what our direction is.
People are restless. They have a sense of discontent, and I think for good reason. I think people have a feeling that they've been dehumanized. There's a general revulsion against politics and against politicians. We seem to have introduced political assassination into our culture. Violence is becoming an increasing part of our lives.
Kent State University in Ohio has had campus violence for 3 nights. And today the guardsmen opened fire on the students.
All of a sudden I heard the shooting, and then I saw people dropping to the ground.
The early 70s, this was a horrible time. After Sirhan's trial, I sort of just leveled off and tried to forget about it. Now, there was a long period when I just couldn't handle it. I broke up a relationship. I lost my job in the union. I went back to work in the factory. But nearly 2 years afterwards, I went to see Cesar Chavez in jail in Salinas, California. There was a big rally outside jail, and we got Ethel to join us. Farm workers always had big masses at all their meetings. And she punched me in the ribs when we were standing together on a flatbed truck. And what's that for? And she said, "This is the second mass I've been to today, Paul." She was fun to be with. There was a little freakish growers and their allies, the Teamsters, throwing their picket signs at us, spitting at us. We got into jail. We went through the cell block. Viva Chavez, Viva Ethel. And Ethel at the car says, "Boy, you show some weird parties out here, Paul."
It was a really hard time. I know in the Chicano movement, a lot of people became cynical. They didn't want to get involved in politics anymore. They just felt that it was just hopeless.
We saw the disparagement of the integrity of the American democratic system by an administration that ended up in disgrace.
The Watergate scandal broke wide open today. 5 men were arrested early Saturday while trying to install eavesdropping equipment at the Democratic National Committee. The country tonight is in the midst of what may be the most serious constitutional crisis in its history.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
When Nixon went down, it was a sad time for America. There were so many terrible things that were going on under the surface.
Good evening. The bad news on assassination plots was reported today by the Senate Intelligence Committee. The committee issued a report which says that officials of the United States government initiated plots to kill 2 foreign leaders, were involved in plots to kill 2 others, were implicated in another, and that the CIA was aware of 2 more murder schemes.
What the government did, not just domestically, but in foreign policy, it fed into the belief that all of the murders that took place in that period were part of a conspiracy.
In Washington today, the House committee just beginning a new investigation into the Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassinations.
I do believe that some individuals in very high places of our government were involved in this conspiracy that eliminated and destroyed President Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, and Dr. King.
I'm convinced we need a new investigation with access to all the pieces before the American people will ever know the truth.
A conspiracy is not always 5 guys in a room plotting. A conspiracy can be the conspiracy of the culture.
Wouldn't it be horrendous to go into another presidential election without knowing whether a group of conspirators may exist in this country who, at moments of political decision, influence the course of events improperly?
In 1974-75, Allard Lowenstein came to me and said, "We think there's something else happening in Robert Kennedy case."
Now, what I found when I started to look at this case is clearly the tip of something. Whether it's an iceberg or whether it's a simple pin that has a tip, I don't know.
And we began questioning what really happened that night.
Currently, the autopsy says that the bullet that killed Senator Kennedy entered at 1 inch from behind his right ear, and that he was hit by 3 bullets, all of them fired at point-blank range. A 4th went through his right shoulder pad. Now, the eyewitnesses every credible eyewitness insists that what they saw was that Sirhan was standing at an average of 2 feet to a yard away and in front. And when you tell them that the bullets went in from behind at an inch, they flatly say that there is no way Sirhan could have fired those bullets.
Isn't it difficult to suppose that somebody else getting that close to Kennedy would not have been noticed?
Actually, he was noticed, and he was that close. The man's name, the guard that you're talking about, was, by his own testimony, holding Kennedy's elbow, standing precisely at the place from which the bullets entered Senator Kennedy. He also acknowledges pulling his gun and says he didn't fire it.
Thane Eugene Caesar, a plumber by trade, moonlighting out of the Ace Guard Service, entered the pantry at Kennedy's side.
When the shots were fired, when I reached for my gun, and this one I got knocked down. Got back up, I had my gun out, but they already had him restrained.
At his request, Caesar was never asked to take the witness stand.
I told him if it's all possible, I just not be involved.
Caesar made terrible remarks about the Kennedys.
I definitely wouldn't have voted for Bobby Kennedy because he had the same ideas as John did, and I think John sold the country down the road. He gave it to the commies, he gave it to whoever else he wanted to, he literally gave it to the minority.
But Caesar was carrying a .38, and it was .22 caliber bullets found in the victims. How could Caesar be involved?
We had a lot of questions, but we couldn't get into the files. So we asked for a meeting with the chief of police, Chief Davis. Chief Davis said, okay, give us your questions in writing, which Allard and I put together, filed with the chief, and never got an answer. Allard called again, and still no answer. Calls, no answer, no answer, no answers.
Now, this was obviously an open and shut case right from the beginning with all of the witnesses and the physical evidence.
So we did a press conference.
I was nearly killed that night, and as I told the police commission, I have a legal right as well as a moral right to that information.
As long as they participate in the refusal to grant access to this information, they are participating in a cover-up of information which we have a right to have, which the public has a right to have, because we have a right to know what went on June 5th, 1968.
We got into court on a couple of issues and more information.
This is what it's all about. The evidence collected in the assassination of Senator Robert Kennedy 7 years ago. Evidence shown in public in Los Angeles Superior Court this afternoon. The gun Sirhan used to shoot the senator, the bullets recovered from Kennedy's body and from other victims. All this evidence will now be re-examined by a panel of nationally known experts. They will attempt to resolve some unanswered questions about the Kennedy shooting, whether there was more than one gun and more than one assassin.
The ballistic evidence was checked as a result of a suit filed by Paul Schrade, a former union executive who was wounded when Robert Kennedy was killed.
I prefer that we approach this thing cautiously. We have to do a good job on these tests, or people are again going to lose confidence in what the authorities are doing.
We found out really scandalous activity on the part of the police department. There was key evidence, crucial evidence destroyed.
2 Los Angeles police officers claim they examined what appeared to be a small caliber bullet embedded in a door jamb in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel. It could add up to 9 bullets fired in the pantry. Sirhan's gun could shoot only 8. The door jamb itself has since been destroyed.
Assistant Police Chief Darrell Gates told the City Council police destroyed bullet-marked panels from the Ambassador Hotel ceiling, along with x-rays of the panels and the x-ray records.
What was the reason for the destruction of the
The reason for the destruction was that there was simply, the materials simply had absolutely no bearing on the case.
It seems to me that at that point in history, when there were so many rumors and kooks running around the country talking about conspiracy in Dallas, that we would have kept that kind of evidence on hand just to answer these kinds of questions.
We kept fighting, but we couldn't get any place.
The object being pointed to in an AP photo, an object identified back in 1968 as a bullet, appears to have been a nail.
Today, firearms experts rendered their opinion. Unanimously, they found no evidence to support the so-called second gun theory.
My basic conclusion is that Sirhan acted alone in the murder of Senator Kennedy. I have found no evidence of a second gunman or of any conspiratorial activity.
The court system wasn't working, but we began getting political support from members of the city council to get into the files. And in 1988, Police Commission finally decided to release the files.
They are reminders of a national tragedy and a controversy. 50,000 documents collected by the Los Angeles police after the murder of Robert Kennedy. State Archives officials say that a bullet taken from Sirhan's pocket is gone and that police destroyed more than 2,400 photographs. Scholars who question the lone gunman theory say they are shocked.
There's even more evidence destroyed than we already knew about.
What is not here has renewed the controversy. Was there a second gun? Was there a conspiracy?
Conspiracy theory is a very convenient way of thinking about problems. But I really want to get at the truth. It's been a long, hard struggle getting those files. And I'm still finding out information where they destroyed evidence, withheld evidence. I have the responsibility of Robert Kennedy, as part of his legacy of justice, to know the truth about this. If we don't search for the truth, we are not providing him with justice. So it's my job as a citizen, as a friend of Robert Kennedy's, and just as a person. What I want is a new investigation. The problem is that we've always gone and said, would you please reopen the case? But it hasn't worked. It's really disappointing, but it just means we got to keep going with a different strategy and keep working on it. That different strategy is to expose the fact that Sirhan was convicted without all the evidence. Hello?
Hey, Paul. Lori speaking.
Hi, Lori.
How are you?
Okay.
I got the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled yesterday that they still didn't see where any of Sirhan's constitutional rights were violated.
That's the court system for you.
The Ninth Circuit has denied us. Under the Ninth Circuit, you can actually put into evidence that was available at the time of trial but was not submitted, not just evidence that was found afterwards. So we were able to put into evidence things that were available that Grant Cooper never submitted. And yet we still were not successful.
The next court then would be the Supreme Court,
Uh-huh.
and the Supreme Court's not going to hear this case.
Uh-huh.
We didn't expect to win in the Ninth Circuit, but we don't have a solid plan as to how we're going to proceed. Do we need something radical? Yes, we do.
I think that we might have leverage at this point with a new Attorney General. We have this information that we can toss at the police chief.
My major concern is every time you deal with the Los Angeles Police Department or the state of California, it's like a fraternity.
Yeah.
And they protect themselves. Yeah. And they're still protecting themselves 48 and a half years later. So I don't know how far you're going to be able to go on that. Do I think that Sirhan is going to be released from prison? No, I don't. Do I think that there's hope that we're going to get at some of the truth? Yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't continue to do it.
Sirhan has been in San Quentin since May of 1969.
In 1972, California did away with the death penalty, and Sirhan became a life prisoner.
The California Parole Board today canceled the 1984 parole date for Sirhan, the man who killed Bobby Kennedy.
This is a subsequent number 13 parole consideration hearing. You would introduce yourself next by stating your first and last name.
I'm Sirhan, Sirhan, B21014.
Thank you. Well, what do you remember about the shooting, if you're willing to talk about that?
I was there, but I don't remember the exact moment. I don't remember pulling my gun out of my body or wherever it was located, and I don't remember aiming at any human being. I don't remember any of that.
If I was to give you a piece of paper and a pencil, and I said, make a list of the people that maybe you feel that you've harmed, Who would be number one on the list?
Well, definitely the Kennedy family and the Kennedys. I would say that I would treat them all equally, and the victims who were injured in this, and the public, and the Bobby Kennedy's friends, and the people who voted for. This whole thing was it's a horrible nightmare, really, for not just for me, but for you people, for the whole country, and especially for the family members.
Understand, this crime was huge. It wasn't just a man dying or 5 others being injured. It had much greater impact. You need to be able to demonstrate that you understand that. So with that, sir, you have a 5-year denial. Hearing is now concluded. The time is 5:49.
On deficit.
Trying to maintain my health. I had a sister died of a heart attack. She was 80, so generally I'm okay and want to stay that way. But it also tells me that I got to get this job done. And even though I'm very slow and criticize, I'm self-critical about it, that I got to get it done. I'm not really moving as quickly as I want to.
That photo in particular, why don't you put that away?
Because there's evidence. Emotionally, it doesn't bother me anymore. It's useful in doing what I'm trying to do, and that's finding justice for Robert Kennedy.
Paul?
Hi, Juan.
I'm very glad to meet you.
You figured that I remembered. Thank you for coming.
You have a lot more gray hair than I remember myself, yeah. Yeah, no, you look good, though.
Oh, thank you.
Very good. Very, very happy to be here.
You too.
So what time we met?
Because I remember you being so small.
Yeah, skinny.
And skinny as a buff boy.
Yeah.
Can I take a look at this? Yeah. A little inscription on it's from Ethel.
So this is from Ethel, huh?
Yeah, from Ethel.
It's a picture of Chavez.
Yep.
Wow.
I don't know if you can handle this, but this is...
Oh, no, I can do it now.
Okay.
Now
This is a picture of you.
Yeah. Meeting Bobby Kennedy changed my life. As an immigrant teenager, living in the barrio, living in the projects, I had resigned to that fact that I was either going to end up in jail or in a gang or dead. Bobby gave us hope that no matter religion, color, or age, or whatever, he showed me that I mattered. And of course, when I seen him on the floor, just hope seems to be dying with him, And it just felt like
You did.
Yeah, nobody was there for us anymore.
Well, I remember seeing you when you were shaking hands with him. You could see that there was something happening. I could feel because the way you looked, and then the way he looked. You're important to Robert Kennedy, and you were there when he needed somebody. This is really what Robert Kennedy wanted. This is the Robert F. Kennedy School.
Wow. So how old is this place now?
The whole thing was dedicated in 2013. I got involved in 87. The school was built on the Ambassador Hotel site. Donald Trump owned the property.
Oh, did he?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
We took it away from him. We fought him in court. So there are 5 high schools in
The kids in this neighborhood, mostly Latino kids, some African American kids, needed a school built.
So this is your old workplace.
Oh, it's amazing how they kept it, you know.
Yeah. So this was the embassy ballroom. That's where Bob made his victory speech. Speaker platform right here. Yeah. And the pantry behind those walls.
I could hear the crowds chanting, Bobby, Bobby.
Yeah.
The fact is that all of us are involved in this great effort. It's a great effort on behalf of the United States, on behalf of our own people, on behalf of mankind all around the globe and the next generation.
And that's the mural you were talking about?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a mural showing things about Robert Kennedy's life, all kinds of social issues. So there's the end of the fast, and Dolores Square behind.
Martin Luther King right behind.
Yeah, King, yeah.
You got the ghetto.
Right behind where Robert Kennedy's sitting. That's me holding a strike meeting. And isn't that you over Bob's left shoulder? Huh? Huh? You think?
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Wow, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
Government try to do a good thing. Kill for it.
You are entitled to that new spirit of America, Senator Robert F. Kennedy.
How would you like to be remembered? I mean, what would you like the first line of a history book about Robert Kennedy to say?
After the assassination of both Dr. King and Robert Kennedy, I said to myself, you must try to pick up where Robert Kennedy left us.
Oh, shut your crooked ass.
Sometimes when I'm sitting in the school or in a meeting,
crooked with them bitches too, because you're filthy rich.
Robert
It's
Kennedy
like
do?
you ain't doing no fucking
What did Robert
good,
Kennedy do?
dirty ass. Y'all only come out when they fucking appease the fucking people to come out, y'all dirty bastards. All y'all bitches in government ain't worth
end child
shit.
poverty in this rich nation. We are struggling against people who want to take health care and food out of the mouths of children to give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. It's indecent, it's wrong, and everybody should be up in arms. And so the question is kind of who in the world are we as a people?
Now you heard on him. That's the truth. But you should be glad and fuck a wee ass motherfucker. Oh shit. Bullshit. Well, we as motherfucking people are taught to be stupid ass fucking sheeple. And that's why shit's so fucked up.
We're still struggling here to end child poverty in this rich nation. We're struggling against people who want to take health care and food out of the mouths of children to give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. It's indecent, it's wrong, and everybody should be up in arms. And so the question is kind of who in the world are we as a people?
Lincoln didn't get us there, and Dr. King didn't get us there, and Bobby Kennedy didn't get us there. What the hell else is left to say that's going to have a rude awakening to make a nation alive and ready to greet the better part of itself? But we have got to keep trying, and that's what Bobby Kennedy was really about. He was trying to find solutions.
one thing that Robert Kennedy taught me. Robert Kennedy would say the word idiot in Greek. You know what it means? One who is not involved in politics. But he instilled in me that you must be involved in politics. Must.
Man,
Not be on the
fuck
sidelines.
you. That bullshit. Pile of shit. Pile of tricksters. Fucking politics.
So if we give up, then everybody loses. That's one of the phrases that I love most about Caesar, because he would always say, the only time you lose is when you quit. Yep. As long as you keep working, keep going forward, you will win at some point.
And I ain't trying to win. It ain't about winning or losing. It's about getting people to know the truth that is within them. So they won't be without no doubt. What the Creator is showing within them. Let's see what happens. I see that boy killed Kenneth Paul, them dirty bastard.
The lights begin to twinkle from the rock. The long day wanes. The slow moon climbs. The deep moans drown with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world.
Are you African American?
I don't understand the question.
Are your parents, are they? Are you African American?
រមានដែលគួរចាប់អានសម្រាប់ថ្ងៃនេះបានលើកដឹងថាអ្នកជំនួយថ្មីឈ្មោះ Playboy តាមពិតជាបាក់ក្នុងវិធាននាងបាយគាត់ត្រូវបានប៉ូលីសចាប់ខ្លួននិងចោទប្រកាន់ពីបទឧក្រិដ្ឋជាច្រើនករណីដូចជាការលាងលើកកខ្វក់ការចាប់ចម្រិតព្រមទាំងបទល្មើសផ្សេងៗទៀតរួមទាំងមន្តស្គាបផងដែរប៉ូលីសបានធ្វើការតាមដានសំណុំរឿងរបស់ក្រុម Playboy ជាច្រើនឆ្នាំមកហើយមុនពេលឈានដល់ការចាប់ខ្លួន Playboy នេះលើកនេះតាមចម្លើយសារភាពរបស់ Playboy បានបញ្ជាក់ថាខ្លួនមិនមែនជាមេខ្លោងធំនោះទេអ្នកដែលនៅពីក្រោយផែនការធំទាំងអស់នេះគឺជានារីនៃក្រុមវិធាននាងបាយដ៏អាថ៌កំបាំងគ្នា
She's the chef.
ចាំគណៈពេលការនឹងចាំផ្ដល់ចម្លើយគេនឹងបញ្ជូន Playboy ពីស្ថានីយប៉ូលីសទៅកាន់គុកចំពោះព្រៃខ្លា
ពេលដែលយើងទុំសោយស្ទើរឲ្យវាប្រហារយើងគ្រប់ពេលហើយដើម្បីរស់យើងត្រូវតែទល់ដៃគ្នា If you give up you die ឬតែមួយដែលអ្នកទៅធ្វើ If you give up you die សម្រាប់ដើម្បីមកយើងរស់មិនទៅវាកុំស្ដាយ Rock you break break យើងកាន់កម្លាំងយើងរួមកម្លាំងយើងច្បាស់ shake shake Hey hey we're about to break Get away get away get away Action
Support from viewers like you makes this program possible. Please give to your PBS station.
In 1891, a Serbian scientist demonstrated his latest inventions before an awestruck audience at Columbia University. Tubes held in the hand of Mr. Tesla, a reporter wrote, appeared like a luminous sword in the hand of an archangel representing justice. Nikola Tesla was already famous, the scientist whose experiments with electricity were destined to transform daily life in the 20th century.
We live in an electrical world. We take it all for granted. We have light bulbs, we run our refrigerators, our air conditioners, our electrical motors. All of that is all directly back to Tesla.
100 years ago, he pointed the way toward robots, radio, radar, remote control, the wireless transmission of messages and pictures.
Well, where did he get it from?
He dreamed of harnessing the wind and the sun to make free energy available for everyone.
When you think about electricity, you think of Edison. But Tesla was just much more of an original American than Edison.
Tesla had a lot of obsessions and odd phobias, and yet he was enormously popular and celebrated. They did not stop him.
At the turn of the 20th century, Tesla was acclaimed. Millions of Americans knew his name. But only decades later, he was forgotten by all but a few.
He doesn't have a disciplined imagination. He has a fertile imagination. And so he's kind of crazy. Oh, he's a genius. No doubt about it. But he's an idiosyncratic genius.
His luxuriant imagination was the source of his genius and the cause of his downfall. On June 6, 1884,